Season 2 Episode 9 is titled 4 Days Out, and yes, another very rare episode of no old movie references or otherwise abstract shenanigans. This one just has a couple of very literal meanings, the first of which being the little cooking getaway that Walter and Jesse does, and similarly, it's also how long Walter thinks he has until he gets his scans back, and well, he views that as kind of his judgment day, because he expects to just, well, die. The only slightly overanalysis detail here that admittedly has very little to do with Breaking Bad, but it's fun so I'll talk about it, is that a few years later, The Walking Dead, also on the same network of AMC, kinda sorta replicated this episode with 18 Miles Out. The episode's structure is eerily similar to 4 Days Out, with Rick and Shane also going on this extended little getaway to do some similarly shady activities. Absolutely everything in the episode is entirely made up for TV, and there is nothing even remotely similar in the comic book, so yeah, I would say this is maybe inspired, maybe in some way just a nod to Breaking Bad, but I do think it is an idea that is kind of replicated from Breaking Bad. And this also wouldn't be the first time. There's plenty of other Breaking Bad Easter eggs from production materials like the cars and also like the blue meth that shows up in Merle's bag, so this is very much a thing that has happened before. And one last goofy fact before we get into the episode, this one was actually designed to be a bottle episode just to save on budget. I mean, all of it is shot in like a little RV, basically no other actors around, it's just Brian and Aaron, and they're just kinda goofing around in the desert, right? Should be very, very cheap. Yeah, so about that, as it turns out, filming all these very, very cool time lapses and making the whole thing even coherent, where it's like the daytime, but then in the RV, it's supposed to also look like the daytime, it just turns out it's very, very hard, and yeah, this turned out to be the second most expensive episode they'd done up until this point, so very much not a bottle episode to save on budgets. But I mean, hey, if you ask me, well worth it. This is one of my favorite episodes of Breaking Bad, and really television in general. I think it's a beautiful payoff moment to pretty much the entire story leading up to this point, and well, as we'll talk about in the episode, this is very much a transitionary moment to something very, very different. The episode opens with Walt's family at the oncology center. Right away, we see that his cough has gotten worse again, and he repeatedly tries hiding it. It's easy to forget when you've watched the series more than once, but within this episode's narrative, Walter is expecting to get like way, way worse. Like dead worse. By and large, this is the episode where Breaking Bad truly changes from tackling domestic disputes and covering up crimes to something much more existential and philosophical. It evolves from a dying man trying to make money for his family to just a man searching for a reason. A thing to fill a seemingly unfillable hole with himself, but ultimately coming up short. That being said, I really enjoy the way the cough is actually used, because it's a false promise. It amounts to basically nothing. When they get to the doctor by the end of the episode, he pretty much just says that it's worth keeping an eye on and that it could be dangerous, but that it's not really gonna kill him. Again, considering this episode does mark the end of many things, I think it's a very good use of a false promise to effectively guide the entire plot. And on a similar note, as the scans finish, Walter catches a brief glimpse of the scan, noticing a huge white orb in one of his lungs. Obviously, a huge blob in any scan is probably not a good thing, and so Walter very much expects that this is it. And so, with that thought, re-roll intro. We pick up pretty much where we left off last time, with Walter deciding to follow up on Saul's offer of money laundering. Saul explains that it's very simple, the only problem is hiding his riches from his family. But again, Walter believes that it's over for him, so his timelines are very much accelerated.
If she finds out, it's after I'm gone.
How much time they giving you?
Weeks. Maybe.
Only he has another slightly comedic problem. As we've discussed many times before, the old Heisenberger Incorporated is in a bit of a vicious cycle where they make increasingly more money, but also burn increasingly more money trying to cover up past crimes. Just last episode, they burned another cool 80 grand on just getting Badger out. So at this point, he barely has $10,000 left.
We've had some extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, apparently. $9,960. Congratulations, you just left your family a secondhand Subaru.
Similar to Season 1 and his alternative medicine getaway, this plans the idea of another binge cooking session in old Waltberger's brain, with him now saying that he's going to see his mother. The implication here is that he believes he's dying and he's just making his dues. But ironically enough, not visiting her would be the final nail in his coffin of lies. When Skylar would start snooping around for where the money is actually coming from, she would call her up and of course learn that he was neither there nor has he ever told her about the cancer. And I guess on a very similar note, Skylar drops a unknowingly very foreshadowy line that, little does Walter know, would turn his world upside down more than any bad news ever could.
I actually think the news from the scan is going to be good. Perhaps you should prepare for that.
Cutting to Jesse and Jane, we get a brief scene of them talking about what they should do for the day, with Jane saying that they should go to a museum. Jesse asks whether she's talking about the one with the A-bombs, which may or may not be because it's the only museum he's ever been to. Also, literally everything in the bed, including the nearby candles being yellow, the symbol of the suffering brought by the meth, I think is also some not very subtle foreshadowing that the money Jesse is about to make would destroy everything here. Also note the 9,000 IQ foreshadowing of crunch berries, which apparently is the only thing Jesse eats, but more on this in a minute.
We have to cook. You and I need to cook through to next Tuesday.
Tuesday, 4 days straight.
Our methylamine, it's going bad.
The 4 days straight, of course, gives us our episode title, but the whole methylamine thing going bad is a complete lie. By the end of the episode, Jesse would figure as much himself, but I think in a more abstract sense, it's meant to be another way of creating the sense of time running out for Walter. In the prior episode, we saw how Walter has completely conquered his fear of this existential dread, with him telling Hank that it was his diagnosis that finally stopped his anxiety and the fear of all the what-ifs. He had a concrete and terminal end, so there was no point in ever stressing about any of it. And with the PET scan...
Definitely want the PET CT and not just the PET.
Okay, I'm sorry, Marie, PET CT, as well as this lie of the methylamine going bad, I think Walter really is accepting his death. All that remains is what he leaves behind. He has to squeeze out every dollar possible out of the methylamine before he goes bad, if you will.
You brought a meth lab to the airport.
You said we were in a hurry. I saved us a trip.
And with that very goofy line, Jesse and Walter go on their little getaway. This will be the most milquetoast take you have ever heard, I know, but the cinematography all throughout this episode is easily some of the best in the series. And not only does it look absolutely mesmerizing, I think it is also beautiful visual storytelling that even further accentuates that bleak fatalism that we see with Walter. All the sun-bleached white shots very much isolate their RV as this small hearth in the endless wilderness, the final beacon of life. There is this sense of clarity and silent beauty, each shot carrying a sense of melancholy and peace. This is Walter's mental space. One last hurrah before he just checks out. There is never any frantic cuts or otherwise chaotic editing. It's slow, drawn out, almost detached. There is no anxiety, no fear, no chaos. It's all just chemistry, which, in his own words, he finds very therapeutic. What isn't therapeutic, though?
3 entire bags of Funyuns?
Okay, call me a boomer if you want, but if we went on a camping trip or something and the guy responsible for bringing food brought bags of chips as food, I am committing war crimes. And the rest of the food is also just diabolical. He has crunchy berries, which, Jesus Christ, it has 42 grams of added sugar. I didn't even know that was possible. I refuse to believe that this is real. And not even Vince's foreshadowing can save that. But anyway, they also have some kind of mini apple pies. Then there is something that might be peanut butter, but knowing Jesse, it's probably like 2% peanuts, 70% random oil, and the rest is probably sugar. And he also got mini donuts, Cheez-It squeezable cheese, and gummy bears.
How are you even alive?
Yes, Walter, I am actually very much with you right now. Jesse is supposed to be 24, but this is worse than a 10-year-old who has been let free in a supermarket candy aisle. This is one of those situations where I just keep being amazed by what the human body is capable of. This very much reminds me of those coffee order videos that I occasionally see online. I never believe they are real, but like, I'm starting to think they are. What I don't understand though is why Walter is mauling out about the 10 gallons of drinking water, because assuming a very quenchy 4 liters each every single day, it still puts them at just 32 liters by the end of their cooking session. Another tank or something that is separate would of course be smart, but compared to their food situation, 10 gallons of drinking water is sublime. Well, until it isn't, I guess, because it was all just dumped out. Dietary anomalies aside, there is this tiny scene of Jesse wanting to message Jane, but not having signal. Walter, of course, shuts him down, saying Skylar checks his phone records and basically just says that no. But by the end of the episode, Walter would very much have a hopeful, forward-looking outlook for Jesse. So I do wonder whether this small line about a potential relationship did stick with him.
No, not there. That is our workstation.
Now that is what you call a Chekhov's gun. And while said gun is just kinda hanging there, we get what is easily one of the coolest cooking montages so far. Very much in line with that serenity we see with the rest of the desert shots, their lab too now has much more of a industrial look. Unlike pretty much every single cook thus far, there is no messing around, no comedic thing of Jesse doing something, the both of them are just working, and that's it. Also, note the greenish teal-ish gloves, the color of greed and money. This entire episode is about Walter trying to cook every last drop of methylamine. And while his greed doesn't really play into the whole battery debacle that blows up in their face, his insistence on going as hard as possible definitely is, well, greed. Also, I can't not mention it again, the shots of the desert are such a vibe. This shot right here might genuinely be my favorite shot in all of Breaking Bad and hell, most of television. This is the sunset of emotional deflections for Walter. The final time that their lab is truly therapeutic. This is where his newfound confidence is twisted right back at him, because the results of the scan will be something infinitely scarier than death. It'll be life. A life with the consequences of everything he has done. And very fittingly, this is also the last time that we'll be seeing them cooking the RV. So, this sunset is also the sunset for their lab.
$672,000.
All in.
Each.
$672,000
each.
Hell yeah! Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on!
Okay, this is one of the hypest sequences in the entire show, but let's stop right there because the math kinda is not mathing. Like we saw last time with Citizen Z, Jesse very much took Walter's advice and jacked up the prices, with Badger selling just a tenth for $175. Times that by 16 for an ounce and another 16 for a pound. You get $44,800. A whole 4.8k over Jesse's $40,000 a pound price. Now, this is just 12%, so that could be markup from Badger, except Walter calculates for distribution in his calculations. So it's kind of unclear where this discrepancy in prices actually comes from. It is close enough for it to kind of make sense. I mean, it is just 12%, that's realistically just markup, but it's also not something as simple as markup because they already calculate for it. That aside though, Walter of course wants to keep cooking, but Jesse manages to talk him into taking at least one night off.
Battery's dead. Did you hear the buzzer buzz? I did not.
Is this just a genetic thing with you? Did your mother drop you on your head when you were a baby?
Buzzer?
And after this, well, it's just all downhill. They pour all the gas over the generator, which of course sparks and promptly explodes. This one is on Walter though, because why didn't you just tell Jesse to wait before starting it? Like, you obviously saw that it was wet. In the desert, the gas would have evaporated very quickly. Literally just wait for a minute and you'd be fine. What's definitely not on Walter though is Jesse dumping all of their remaining drinking water on the generator. Usually, you'd be told to never put water on a gasoline fire because it's just going to sink to the bottom and spread the actual flammable stuff even further. While all of that is very true and does kinda sorta apply to this situation, the much bigger problem is that, well, they only had one tub of drinking water, and while, as per our calculations, it clearly proved enough for just drinking, it most certainly isn't enough to also function as a firefighting weapon.
Fire! Excuse me for thinking on my feet!
Oh, is that what you were thinking? Now that we have identified the problem.
Now stranded, the only real option they have is to call someone for help, so Jesse calls old Skinny Pete to come and save them. And also, Walter's reaction to Jesse's homemade antenna is just gold. While they're waiting in the RV, Jesse tells the story of a hiker he saw on the Discovery Channel, saying he broke his leg mountain biking and survived by drinking his own urine. He doesn't name the person, and I'm sure the drinking pee part makes all of our brains just go straight to Bear Grylls, but I'm fairly certain the story is based on, but not actually about, Aaron Ralston. Ralston didn't break his leg, but rather had his arm crushed and pinned, and he also described drinking his own pee to survive 127 hours. There has been a movie along with a dozen documentaries about him, so there is a ton of lore if you're curious, but all in all, I think Jesse's story is just an amalgamation of different survival stories and isn't really about one set individual. And about the whole drinking pee thing, I am fairly certain that this is a terrible idea that makes literally everything just worse. Beyond the obvious fact that you are literally drinking bodily waste, as in stuff that your body literally says it doesn't need, when you're consuming the salts from your own urine, you're completely throwing off your own electrolyte levels, and it'll only make you more dehydrated. If even the US Army explicitly says to avoid this, even in emergencies, I think it's fair to say that it is a terrible idea all around. I am sorry, I have now ruined every single cheap tropey survival story you will ever watch or read. I have no idea why this became a trope and why this is literally everywhere. Yes, I get it, it's haha funny he is drinking his own pee, but like, enough. We know it's bad. We know it doesn't make any sense. No one would do this. At least I hope no one would do this. Very bad beverage choices aside, Jesse pushes Walter to call Skinny again.
You just crossed the river?
What river?
Yo, what river? Pete, what the hell river are you talking about, man? There's no river.
Phone's dead.
Okay, first off, I find it hilarious that Skinny Pete is just driving around in the middle of nowhere. But another gorgeous time-lapse later, we get to working the problem yet again, with Walter hooking up the generator in an attempt to manually trickle charge the battery. Obligatory, my dreams of going into science stuff were shattered, so I somehow ended up getting a finance degree only to make YouTube videos about TV shows, so I'm not an engineer or a scientist, but purely theoretically, Walter's idea is sound, and in theory, this will work. The problem is, the RPM the two of them can realistically output, the power that'll actually generate in any realistic amount of time, and the massive surge of power starting the RV would actually take. So, putting it all together, they'd be spending hours and hours and hours and hours cranking that thing, and producing basically nothing. The theory is correct, and they are generating something, but practically, yeah, this was never gonna work. Also, in case anyone was wondering why not just charge the phone, because you know it's a small battery, they would need a DC regulator to just not fry the phone. Best case scenario is that it just wouldn't work and, well, nothing would happen. Worst case scenario is that they'd kill the whole phone and waste time. And in both of these scenarios, remember that they are completely out of supplies. In the desert heat, without water, they simply don't have the time to take these gambles. So, for Walter, this literally is all or nothing.
Oh, then you hanging in?
I'll give it a little longer.
Meat doesn't spoil, does it?
Jesse does of course call out Walter for lying, but I think it's blatantly clear that he understands, just like we saw in Season 1 with him piecing together that Walter has cancer in the first place. Just like he bit the bullet for his little brother by lying about the joint being his, or the years he spent caring for his aunts, he will put in the extra elbow grease to make sure that Walter can take care of his family after he is gone. Beyond all of their crash outs at each other, Walter has given him a purpose, a way he can improve himself, even if said improvement involves the manufacturing of controlled substances. But it's of course also this exact sense of purpose and belonging that would cause a very, very intense clash between Jane and Walter. But let's not jump ahead, because we've got more pressing issues.
No, please, God. Mr. White! Mr. White!
Also, side note, apparently there is a tarantula that's about to crawl up Walter's hand in this scene, so that's not fun. It's a trained tarantula, so it's not like gonna kill him, but still, not fun. But this takes us to what very well might be the most important scenes in all of Breaking Bad. Walter's own perceptions of his life that are untainted by the thoughts of what comes next. At this point, he is truly convinced that this is where he dies and there is no way out. And so, I think with everything he says, this is one of the only ever times we just see the raw truth from him.
I deserve this. Let's worry and disappoint them. All the lies. Can't even keep them straight in my head anymore.
Jesse tells Walter, no, you did all of this for your family. Except, he never knew about Elliot or Gretchen. He never knew that Walter could have just literally asked for help and never gotten into this situation in the first place. That is what Walter is referring to when he says that he can't even keep the lie straight in his own head. This is him saying that pretty much everything he has done was for him. The money was always a solvable problem. So, did he ever do anything for his family, or was it all just ego and ambition? And very fittingly, Walter is wearing the most simple white t-shirt. This is admittance, a sort of a absolution for him, his last words before he resigns to death. That is the only excuse, the only shield he has left, death. Because how could he ever justify even a single part of what they're doing if it were not for death? Just what kind of mental gymnastics will he have to go through if the cancer is gone? Yes, this is me asking rhetorical questions to build suspense, because, spoilers, he is not dying, and this is the episode where this version of Walter, I guess, ironically enough, dies for good. Also, side notes, this scene was shot as if to purposely mirror his talk with Skylar at the start of this episode, where, surprise surprise, all he did was lie.
What are we building?
You said it yourself.
Robot?
A battery.
The robot line was apparently unscripted, but Brian and Aaron really wanted to have it in there. And also, similar to the whole trickle charging thing from a moment ago, realistically, it is very, very doubtful whether this would ever work. Something that Walter himself would acknowledge.
The only question now is, will this supply enough current?
What is realistic, though, is this spark, which, according to Vince and Brian, is actually real. Physics aside, though, this is another great bonding scene between Walter and Jesse, with Walter quickly turning their situation into another lesson. Despite their life and death situation, Walter slows down and explains step by step how the whole thing works, which again highlights that mentor/fatherly part of their relationship that we've seen many times already, with the breakfast incident being the most recent example. But it'd be remiss of me not to mention that this is also the source of one of the greatest memes of all time.
One particular element comes to mind.
Wire.
Copper.
Okay, the goofy, unhinged jaw thinking face that Aaron Paul pulls here just brings all of it together, because Jesus Christ, how does this show manage to pull something as goofy and stupid as this, yet also somehow is 100% serious drama? 10 out of 10, bravo Vince. But with that, they try to jump the RV, and it actually works, with Vince masterfully foreshadowing the Absolute Cinema meme almost 20 years in advance. Bravo Vince! And what's also worth of bravo Vince is the flashback to this day we get in LEMMiNO. Just like the Better Call Saul flashbacks, this too is a brief moment in time that is there to really hammer home this somber and regretful look back. It is a brief memory of how simple things were, and how their descent into the true abyss started. It is all a look at a path that was not taken. Before Jesse drives Walter back to the airport, we see them clean up at a hotel and swing by a cafe. Jesse scolds Walter for not eating, saying he needs all of those electrolytes and whatnot, but Walter is quiet, again repeatedly trying to hide his cough. He believes that this was the end, their final cook. This was the sunset on their RV. And so the next question is,
how long will it take to sell this batch? 6 months. Easy, maybe more. Their family is gonna get every dime they got coming to them, no matter how long it takes.
The camera briefly lingers on Walter as his face quivers ever so slightly, his tired eyes glimpsing the light in Jesse. For a moment, it almost looks like he's about to cry, with him briefly turning his gaze away before glancing back up. And so, with that hope and light, he asks Jesse,
What about college? Say you went to college. What would you study, you think? Huh?
Suddenly, all of the armor disappears, and Walter speaks with the warmth of a caring father, saying Jesse would do great in marketing. He could practically teach the course. He smiles the entire time, genuinely showing a heartfelt interest in Jesse's future. Knowing where the story goes, it is an absolutely gut-wrenching scene because this could have been it. They could have started over. But because this is Vince Gilligan, this simple beauty must be completely and utterly destroyed. Walter misremembers Jesse's graduation, prompting him to be overly defensive and dismissive. In an instance, that genuine connection is shut down, with him coldly saying that,
You know what? Forget it. I don't have a larger point. I'm just making conversation.
obviously, that is not true. And despite closing off and trying to hand-wave that connection away, he does admit one thing.
You're really lucky, you know that? You didn't have to wait your whole life to do something special.
And if that isn't the perfect line to finish this off, then I don't know what is. It's this bittersweet moment of him acknowledging the self-imposed change that he had had for his entire life, but also telling Jesse that he is free of them, free to do whatever he wishes. This truly is a parent never wanting their own child to go through the same struggles that they did. A truly selfless moment of reflection. But alas, this is Breaking Bad, and this is not the happily ever after. This is the last happy memory before we peer deep into the abyss.
Walt, I have your scan results. Walt, your tumor has shrunk by 80%.
As a almost ethereal music plays, Walter stands in the bathroom as his hands begin to shake. And barely a moment later, that music, that life, that hope, it all fades away. For years and years, people have discussed where exactly the Heisenberg persona is quote-unquote born. For me though, that has never really been all that interesting, as I've always thought the much more important question is, where did Walter end? I believe it is this scene right here. This show began with Walter's diagnosis. A cruel and deeply unfair, inescapable fate that would tear his family apart. And so, Walter hid behind that unfair cruelty. For 16 whole episodes, he has used it as a shield, a moral justification for everything he does, all the while sliding deeper and deeper into the drug world. Even in the darkest of times, the excuse was never that he was doing the right thing. It was always just that he did it for his family. He did bad things for a good reason. But what if you took that justification away? The moral high ground he thought he had. The supposed reasoning for everything he had done. Why did he kill Crazy? Why did he break in and steal the methylamine? Why did he deal with the Psycho Tuco? Why did he have to watch him beat his own man to death? Why lie so much that he doesn't even remember the truth? What remains of Walter White when the cancer, the tragedy that changed the feeble old chemistry teacher, is taken away? And with that, that is episode 9. I think I've said it enough times by now. This is one of my favorite episodes in all of Breaking Bad. I think it's the beautiful send-off moment to, well, the RV and kind of everything we had done up until this point, and this really is the last moment where things could have stopped. After this point, it is purely escalatory, mainly because of Walter, and, I mean, it's sad to watch, but it's also damn interesting. And you know what's also damn interesting? This segue to our YouTube members and Patreon members, who I want to give a massive thank you to, and let's also give a warm welcome to the newest members of the team, Sandy Ramos, I think, and Barba Chimaru. Something like that. You kind of stun-locked me with that name. But yes, without you, there'd be a whole lot less of my rambling, so seriously, thank you, thank you. Other than that, I want to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.